Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, we have an amazing guest. We have Joel Bokenfohr from Farm Credit Canada joining us. How are you, Joel?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Excited. We're just about to start seeding on our own farm. So things are going well.
Excellent. We are calving on our farm. The sun is shining. The snow has disappeared. It's the best time of year. Today, guys, I have Joel joining us for an episode. We're going to be talking about Farm Credit Canada's podcast. It is titled FCC Knowledge, Talking Farm and Food Podcast. So, Joel, I'm excited to have you on the show again. Welcome back. Before we dive into the podcast, do you want to tell our audience a little bit about who you are and your role with FCC?
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Really looking forward to it as well. I'm one of a team of business advisors for Farm Credit Canada. We primarily meet with farms that are looking at the transition space. So we do a lot more than that. We have a lot of resources that we connect to in the general business planning, but we generally have one or two business advisors in each province that work to support farms and farm families in the early stages of their farm transition goals. So either helping them with a bit of a gap analysis, helping them connect to different professionals, and helping them maybe address where they might be stuck on a little bit of a plan. And we get to work with a great team of relationship managers that all have really strong farm backgrounds as well, and try to support FCC clients and non-FCC customers as well in building out and enhancing their farm transition plans.
I love it. Perfect. So today we're going to be talking about FCC's podcast. And I wanted to have you guys on the show because anybody that listens to the Impact Farming Show is going to be the same type of listener for the FCC podcast. So why don't we dive in a little bit? Can you tell our audience the vision behind the podcast? I always love hearing about that, why FCC went the podcast route, and really the mission vision behind the show.
Yeah, I think another way to just connect with farms that are out there, right? So I think it's something that's such a great medium for people to use and to access. And for farms, it makes so much sense to be able to reach out and communicate out. And for us at Farm Credit, we've got so many different resources for farm planning, so many different articles. And sometimes, right, as a farmer, if you're in the tractor, you're in the barn, I think the podcast route makes it such an easy access to be able to listen to different people talk about different issues. I think, whenever there's a farmer that once told me, cultivating a field was similar to putting him in the state to doing, a couple hours of yoga or something like that. That was a relaxing thing, that having the podcast while he was in the tractor really, while he was in a state of mind to relax and think things through, really enhanced what he took away from different podcast episodes. So it was really to extend that medium out and to help leverage a lot of the great information we have in a different format and things like that. So really enjoyed getting to be part of season 3 a little bit, and kind of the great work Shayla and her team does behind the scenes to get the podcast available.
Love it. Can you tell us more about the ideal listener for season number 3?
Yeah, and exactly like you mentioned, a lot, similar maybe to your show for us for season 3, I think there's something in there every farm or every kind of farm family can take away from season 3. It really did focus on farm transition a little bit, but in that it was really stepped out into kind of a 9-part series. So it was really about taking a program we did, Your Path to Farm Transition, and relaying it into the podcast format. That I don't know that we always tend to say every farm's in a bit of a transition state, that there's little practices you can take and implement as you're planning. And I think every farm out there can take something away from each of the episodes, that it's really fundamental business practices that can help and really dial into. So sometimes when we're trying to cover them in a podcast format from a high level or from a video format, right, we can kind of skip through the high components, but each of those episodes really dialed in on a core topic, whether it's values or whether it's wills or whichever, and really relays that back to farms as a focused message that ties into not just your transition goals, but your business goals. So I would say ideally it's for people in a transition place that you can kind of get to pick which step you want to look at or you need some more information on at a given time, but something in there every farm can maybe take away a nugget or benefit from to some degree.
Perfect. And you touched on, kind of covered my next question. What do the episodes look like? And we'll go deeper a little bit. You mentioned the pathway to transition. Where did that come from and what's the vision behind? And if you want to expand on any of the episodes, the stage is yours for that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And maybe I'll maybe highlight a few of what's in there for each of the episodes, but
Oh, okay, perfect.
I think like in the your path to farm transition, I think was one that we really looked at that, again, it's another, I'll say in our first episode, I did the first one with Anessa Good, a colleague in Southern Alberta, and a game we played was buzzword bingo in that a little bit, that this transition space can get to be a little bit, there's some of the same cliches that pop up a little bit in farm transition, right? That you face. And one of those is that everything is unique to you a little bit as a family, as a business, that your path to farm transition was really set up that way to say, you're not going to have the same plan as the farm next to you. You're going to go through a different set of experiences. You're going to have different values, goals for what you want the future of your family, your business to look like. And was really to set up to highlight, to take some pressure off that this is your path. You get to dictate what it's going to look like. But there are some steps that every family is going to go through and prioritize for themselves. So as a team, as a national team, we put together a 9-part video series and podcast series here to really highlight, these are 9 steps that every family is going to go through a little bit. And you pull out where you are on that pathway, that there's going to be no one direct answer that's going to solve everything for you as a family. You got to pull out the key pieces and prioritize how you're going to move forward as a family. So it's really your pathway, and then it let us build some more in-depth content around each of those components. And almost every series has a tool that's kind of dedicated to it as well, that we were able to kind of update and say, okay, now in addition to that, here's some tools you can take away and keep working with. And all of those would be housed in our knowledge section of our website as well. And so it's really set up to identify, it's your path. And I think, there's a recent study that just came out that said, in the next 10 years, 40% of farms are going to be transitioning fairly substantially, right? That's not a new stat. It's been something that's ongoing, but I think as we've seen, right, some good productive years in ag, that there's going to be a little more urgency on transition. And I think 66% of producers don't have a formalized plan. And so those things get to be a little alarming, and it's something that says, hey, we can put some resources here from Farm Credit to help address that and make it a little easier for people to use tools and follow good practices.
Okay, perfect. So we spoke about the ideal listener, some of the episodes, the pathway to transition, and of course, they're all on the podcast. And you said in video format too, did you say?
Yeah, so we have they're recorded as a series of YouTube videos as well on our YouTube site.
Okay, perfect. So I'm not sure if you want to dive in a little bit more, or we just save it. Stage is yours. But I think the next question I want to talk to you about, and again, you can expand there, but if someone listens to an episode, what's the main thing you hope they take away from each episode? So again, expand on anything if you need to, or we can just go right there.
Okay, no, that's great. And I know I did mention I'd cover them. Maybe I will cover them all if that's okay. If we've got that,
sure.
It's a great series that's out there. And like I said, we talked about it, your path, and so every family is they're at a different place when we meet with them, and so it's a different issue. And I always think as they come back in, that ideal listener for that 9-part series, number 1 started. My colleague Anessa Good and I covered from how do you really prepare and identify what might be coming your way in a farm plan. So what are the things that we can sketch out from an early stage, the different issues, the different pieces that you want to pull out, and some things that stuck out for me or stand out for me from that one, I think, was really start thinking a little bit about the end in mind, and maybe what are some of those key issues that are going to pop up your way as a family that I think most families can identify some of the things that, hey, maybe this is something we should really iron out. And we shared our full list of the common themes that pop up for us. And Doesn't mean it's going to be a huge issue for you. Some might be small things that are in there, some might be large ones. And saying maybe we should get on this rather than wait another 5 years before we address maybe a hard topic. And so for me in that one was really preparing and identifying goes a long ways in setting your plan. As I think to our second episode, colleague Andrea and Corey covered that one. It was really about assessing your current state. So identifying where your farm's at, what are some numbers, some tools that you can bring to your different advisors to help you plan as you go forward, and really mapping out what the farm looks like today. And they did a great job following that format. And I think a great podcast episode that you can really listen to identify, okay, how can we parse this out for ourselves and bring this to different advisors? Number 3, I think, was Patty and Patty Durand and Ken Goulash, who really talked about how do we align our values to this as a family? And if we're not aligned, how do we get comfortable recognizing that we've got a different value structure that, right, means we can still work together, but kind of revisiting and identifying that can become important. We talked a little bit in number 4 about how does a transition team evolve in this? So what can that, who are the different people we might want to access as a team, and what are the good traits of good advisors that can really help us in a plan? So I was joined by SRM out of Camrose, Jolene Bolding, lawyer Reed Wilkie, and an accountant, Kari Speaker-Smith. And we really went through a plan of how do you get your professionals working together, what types of things are each of those professions looking for in part of a plan, and really the value a good professional can bring back to enhancing your family and your business goals. And then a great one that always stands out, both such engaging speakers, Patty Durand and Tom Dean spoke to will planning on farms as well, and really the highlight of good will planning and what it can do for a farm, and really the need both generations can take away and use from. And it's not just the senior generation that might need these tools, but the junior generation becomes really important that they've got their kind of ducks in a row and things looked after as well. And some resources there for his Willing Wisdom Index that come on that. And number 6 was fortunate. I had a now retired advisor, but a great resource as well. Merle Good joined to discuss business planning. So got to do a really good role play with Merle, where he played, in essence, my farm father, and we went through a scenario where how could we use a business plan to further our farm transition conversation. And so we had a lot of fun with that. And Anessa, if you're looking in the video series, Anessa joined us for a little bonus content on where she came in to play the farm daughter. And we talked a little bit about, fair and equal, what's going to pop up from a fair and equal conversation. So it was quite fun from that side. And then Anessa Good out of Southern Alberta and Andrea DeGroot were joined by an advisor, Ian Cubitt, for number 7, where they really talked about how do we transfer knowledge in our plan, how do we shift our mindsets, and really start to embrace that transfer of knowledge within a farm family and what it's going to mean for us over time. So great resource from that perspective. And then our follow-up one was where Patty Durand, Terry Jones, and Andrew DeGroot kind of talked a little bit about how do you align on your plan? So how do you get it? How do you get different perspectives, consider different views on things, and really align on a common plan among generations? And they carried on that role play and kind of got unique with that. And our final one, we're joined by a few more of our business advisors, and we kind of went through a process. How do you keep revisiting it? What are the takeaways? And how do you kind of keep your plan fresh a little bit so that it's not just, okay, we checked this one piece off, we're going to come back to it and revisit this as we go forward. So I know there's a lot of different topics to kind of take in a row here, but was really quite an in-depth series to say, okay, you're not going to cover this all at once, but here's something that you can take away when you're dealing with this certain topic, come back to it, use this podcast or resource to kind of refresh yourself on what I want to cover in my farm plan.
Fantastic. Thank you for walking us through. That sounds like a ton of value in there. Just to sit down, if somebody's in the audience and they want to watch it or listen to it, sit down and go through all 9 of them, you said?
Yeah.
Wow. That's brilliant content. Okay. Thank you for walking us through. If you have anything else to add, please do. Stage is always yours. and if not, I'll ask you at the end of the episodes, what's the main thing that you hope listeners, viewers take away?
Yeah, and I think for each of them there is a little bit of a tool that can recognize. I'd say that the common theme comes up with there's some intentionality that's brought to all of it, right? So I think that that sometimes in the past, transition planning has been a little reactive, right? That we've waited for a certain event to happen. That okay, there's a new marriage, we're going to buy some assets, or right, unfortunately sometimes, right, there's maybe a passing of somebody, right, and we wait for this big event to engage in transition planning. And this is, I think the core theme is saying this is something we can live a little bit more, right? So that we can lean into that there's tools and resources that are going to make it easier as well. That oftentimes, right, I think it goes back to expectations come up in certain plans, and that's where, right, little frictions come up, and sometimes there's tools we can use to work our way out of that, or ultimately that the better plan is to be really intentional and kind of ahead of it, that we can right, they might not be right, for some people those issues can be sticking points, for some, right, they can just be easy conversations and we move forward. But really being intentional about your plan, writing things out, and checking off each of these areas is going to take a lot of pressure off when it comes to making some of those big decisions. So I'd say, I think all of us align on it's something you live a little bit versus something you wait to see happen. And that's a bit of the takeaway. And that there's a lot of tools, a lot of advisors and information out there you can connect with to help move that forward too.
Perfect. I have a question for you, but I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair at all. What's your favorite episode and why? From the
Man.
sounds of it, I would say they all would be my favorite.
What I'd say they're all set up to be somewhat individual. So it's something I can say, worked with Merle a lot in the past. So for me, right, it's hard to, it's always hard to say, oh, there's one you're in that, right, is your favorite. But I know for me, we had a lot of fun with that, trying to work through the business plan a little bit. And then when Anessa joined us as well to kind of play that proverbial, right, off-farm sibling that's not coming back to the farm. I know we really struggled with that. So for me, that one stands out, that we struggled to have that conversation, because it is something that's so unique to every family. We would have had to set an exact fact pattern. So it morphed more into, here's 3 advisors sharing some thoughts on what they get when they work with clients. But they all stand out a little bit uniquely, that I know, as I reflect back through the wills one that Tom Deans and Patty did as well, that this year I've had a good year, but I know last year, the number of farms, there's probably 4 farms that really stand out to me, that I remember the first part of our meetings, right, we were really focused on will planning. And I always come back to a little bit that, then unfortunate things did happen. And if they'd had a will in place or something like that, man, it would have eased the pressure that the junior gen, or in one case, the senior gen was dealing with, in that, the power that, value setting, aligning on a plan, and transferring knowledge all really stand out to me as ones that there's some really good tools shared there in each of those episodes that I do come back to. And so I don't have a favorite. I have more of a memory of, right, trying to pull them together, but they each have their own little unique nuggets and kind of wisdom pieces. And it is set up as a series, but it doesn't mean you have to do it in any particular order. I think you can kind of pick the one that feels like this is what we need to deal with today, and then jump around to support your conversations as you go forward.
Yeah, they almost sound like they would complement, of course, the big process, but there's always going to be one that's probably going to hit the hot button for you based on what's going on in your life, right? And you start there and then maybe binge the other ones. They sound great. I can't wait to watch.
Awesome. No, I think, something in there for everyone.
Perfect. So that being said, if somebody wants to tune into the episodes, where can they do that?
Yeah, and so we've got for the podcast itself, so in our knowledge section, so if you go to our FCC website, in our knowledge section, so on the homepage, we have a dedicated knowledge section, and you can link directly to the podcasts from that. So it goes right to our FCC season 3 podcast. You can find it there as well. We're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify podcasts as well. And so searching for Farm Credit Canada, on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can highlight all the information there as well. And then they were recorded YouTubes as well. So you can find it through YouTube podcasts as well, or through the YouTube FCC YouTube channel as well.
Excellent. Joel, I wanted to thank you for being here for the interview. I really appreciate your time. So thank you.
Really appreciate it as well. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And, you know, I also want to give a call out and give credit where credit's due. Thanks to FCC and your entire team there. You guys have really, I know there's great advisors that are doing a lot of work in this space. Absolutely. But you guys have really put a lot of time and energy into creating resources for farmers that they can access for free. And kudos to you guys. That is a huge blessing to the industry. So thank you. And thank you to the team. Okay.
Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay. If you guys in the audience are as excited as I am, I'm going to include all those links to where you can find the episodes in the show page, the show notes. So make sure to head over to Farm Marketer, Impact Farming, and then find the episode and then go in the show notes. You'll find it all right there. And then you can binge those episodes just the same as I'm going to be doing. So if you enjoyed this episode, like it, share it, get it out there, because there's some amazing free content that Joel and the team and FCC have put together for you guys. So thank you for tuning in. See you next week. Bye-bye.